You wake up and nothing is technically wrong. Your life functions. You move through days that look acceptable from the outside. But underneath, there is a quiet ache you rarely name. A sense that something in you is underused. A feeling that this cannot be all there is. You are not broken. You are bored with the life you keep repeating. Every morning blends into the next. Same habits. Same conversations. Same distractions dressed up as comfort. You tell yourself it's fine, that stability is a blessing, that someday you'll do more. But deep down, you feel it. A restlessness you try to silence with noise, scrolling, and routines that demand nothing from you. You feel capable of more, yet trapped in place. This is the ache of the ordinary life. Not suffering, not chaos, but stagnation. It's dangerous because it's quiet. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It convinces you to wait, to stay reasonable, to delay the hard work of becoming someone stronger. You weren't always this muted. There was a time you imagined a bigger life, a sharper version of yourself, a future where discipline, focus, and purpose defined your days. Somewhere along the way, comfort softened that edge. Not all at once, slowly. Comfort always works slowly. It taught you to lower your standards instead of raising your skills. It taught you to cope instead of build, to distract instead of decide. And now you feel it? That tension between who you are and who you know you could be. Here's the truth you don't hear enough. Nothing external is missing. No secret opportunity passed you by. No special gift skipped your name. The gap in your life is not talent. It's direction. It's structure. It's the absence of disciplined action. You don't need more motivation. You need a reason that hurts enough to wake you up. Right now, your story hasn't started. You're still in the opening pages where the main character feels small, uncertain, and invisible. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you early. The extraordinary never announces itself loudly at first. It begins as dissatisfaction, as discomfort, as the sense that staying the same is more painful than changing. You are standing at that edge. Most people turn away from this feeling. They numb it. They bury it under routines and responsibilities and excuses that sound mature. You don't have to. You can listen. You can let this ache sharpen you instead of sedate you, because this ache is not a flaw. It's an invitation. An invitation to stop living on autopilot, to stop negotiating with your potential, to stop confusing comfort with peace. You are not stuck because you are incapable. You are stuck because you have not demanded more from yourself yet. Demand changes everything. The moment you demand discipline, your days begin to organize themselves. The moment you demand focus, the noise loses its grip. The moment you demand standards, your identity starts to shift. This is where ordinary lives begin to break open, not through luck, not through sudden miracles, but through quiet, relentless decisions made when no one is watching. Decisions to show up, to train your attention, to do the uncomfortable work you've been avoiding. You don't need permission to begin. You don't need certainty. You don't need to feel ready. You need to choose. Choose to treat this ache as a signal, not a sentence. Choose to see repetition as a warning, not a prison. Choose to believe that discipline is not punishment, but freedom in disguise. This story is not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming who you were before comfort convinced you to shrink. The extraordinary life is not reserved for the gifted, the loud, or the lucky. It is claimed by those who decide to master themselves, and this is where that decision begins, right now. Nothing dramatic has happened, and that's exactly why this moment matters. There is no collapse forcing you to change. No crisis demanding action. Just you, aware, awake, and slightly uncomfortable. That awareness is power. Most people never feel it clearly enough to act. You are still early enough to rewrite the trajectory, without having to rebuild from ruins. You can choose structure before chaos teaches you the lesson brutally. You can choose discipline before regret becomes permanent. This is the advantage of listening now. You don't have to leap. You don't have to announce anything. You just have to begin aligning your actions with the person you respect, because once you do, the ache changes. It becomes hunger, direction, momentum. And momentum is how stories move forward. This is the quiet starting line where nothing changes outwardly, but everything inside you starts preparing for movement, pressure, and the discipline that follows. This is only the beginning. Chapter 1, When Average Became the Enemy. Average never arrives suddenly. It settles quietly, like dust on furniture you stopped noticing. One compromise becomes routine. One skipped effort becomes habit. Over time, normal stops feeling temporary and starts feeling permanent. You wake up inside expectations you did not choose, following rules you never agreed to. Nobody warned you that comfort would cost you ambition or that safety would slowly drain your edge. Average is not loud. It doesn't threaten. It convinces you to stay, to fit, to accept less while calling it balance. That is how dreams shrink without a fight, and nobody notices until years pass. Society rewards this shrinking. It applauds predictability and labels it maturity. Stay reasonable, they say. Don't risk too much. Don't want too much. Slowly, expectations lower, and you lower yourself to match them. You learn how to be agreeable, manageable, and easy to overlook. Inside, something resists. A quiet hunger for significance you try to silence with logic and comparison. You tell yourself others have it worse. You tell yourself you should be grateful. But hunger doesn't disappear. It waits through weekends, birthdays, promotions, and years that never feel earned by the person you could have been inside. You didn't decide to be average. That's the lie that keeps people asleep. You drifted. You adapted. You followed paths already cleared because they felt safe. Average is rarely chosen consciously. It's accepted gradually. One excuse at a time. One delay at a time. One later stacked on another. Until later becomes never. Until years pass and you can't remember when you stopped challenging yourself. This is how potential leaks away, not through failure, but through neglect that feels harmless in the moment while your instincts quietly beg you to wake up forever silently. Blending in feels harmless at first. You wear it like protection. You avoid judgment. You avoid failure. You avoid standing out. But what you're really avoiding is growth. The cost is invisible until it's unbearable. Missed years. Unused energy. Skills undeveloped. Standards untested. You don't feel the loss daily, but it accumulates. And one day you realize the most painful risk was never risking anything at all. That realization stings because it's honest. And honesty breaks comfortable. Illusions leaving you face to face with your own, neglected potential, and the time you can never reclaim. Again, once awareness fully arrives, average survives by convincing you that wanting more is arrogance, that discipline is obsession, that ambition is dangerous. You start shrinking your desires so they don't embarrass you. You joke about your dreams before anyone else can question them. This is how the cage tightens without bars. You stay polite. You stay realistic. You stay small. Meanwhile, your inner hunger grows louder, heavier, harder to ignore. It doesn't want attention. It wants expression. It wants a life that demands something from you daily and refuses to be numbed by routine forever, no matter how comfortable the cage feels from inside. The tragedy isn't that you failed. It's that you settled. You accepted a smaller version of yourself to avoid discomfort. You traded potential for predictability. And predictability slowly erodes respect for self. When you don't challenge yourself, you stop trusting yourself. When you stop trusting yourself, confidence fades. This is not a character flaw. It's a pattern. And patterns can be broken the moment you become aware of them. Awareness is dangerous to average lives because it demands a response. It refuses to let you hide behind comfort again. Once you see the cost clearly in yourself without excuses remaining, this awareness is the first act of rebellion. Not loud, not dramatic, internal, you begin noticing where you compromise, where you choose easy over meaningful, where you numb instead of build. This noticing changes how you move through your days. You can't unsee wasted hours. You can't ignore lowered standards. Average starts feeling uncomfortable, and that discomfort is progress. It means your instincts are waking up, and once awake, they demand alignment between who you are and how you live, because living divided eventually drains all remaining energy from your body, mind, and belief systems until change becomes unavoidable. Finally, you start realizing that average is not neutral. It's active resistance against your growth. Every day you choose comfort over challenge, you reinforce that resistance. But the opposite is also true. Every moment of awareness weakens the hold average has on you. This is where power quietly begins returning. Not confidence yet, not clarity yet, just honesty. Honest about where you are. Honest about what it costs. Honest enough to stop pretending this life satisfies you or that. Safety is worth the slow erosion of self. You feel each morning when silence settles around you before. Distractions rush in daily, most people never make it past this point. They sense the truth, then retreat. They feel the discomfort, then drown it. You don't have to. You can stay with it. You can let awareness sharpen instead of soften you. This is where the story changes direction. Awareness turns into intention. Intention turns into standards. Standards demand action. And action repeated daily begins separating you from the life that once felt unavoidable, even though you accepted it for years without questioning yourself or noticing how much quiet dissatisfaction it created inside until this exact moment demanded a different response from you. Average became the enemy the moment you noticed it. Not because average is evil, but because it is incompatible with who you are becoming. You can't unknow this truth. You can't return to sleep. Once awareness arrives, responsibility follows. From here forward, every choice matters more. Every compromise costs more. And every disciplined action pays you back in self-respect. This is not pressure. It's clarity. And clarity is the beginning of freedom. The next step is learning how to act on it consistently without waiting for motivation, permission, or perfect conditions, which is where real transformation quietly starts inside discipline. You are no longer innocent to your potential. That is a gift and a burden. From here, excuses feel heavier. Distraction feels emptier. Comfort feels suspicious. This is good. This discomfort is proof that your standards are rising. And rising standards change behavior. You will begin questioning routines that once felt normal. You will notice time slipping away. Awareness will follow you, pushing you toward alignment, demanding that your actions start matching the person you claim you want to become, because identity eventually enforces honesty. Whether you are ready or not and refuses to be ignored again once awakened fully. This chapter ends with awareness. But the journey does not pause. Awareness is the spark, not the fire. Now that average has been exposed, you must decide what replaces it. Drifting is no longer neutral. Waiting is no longer harmless. The next step demands ownership. Ownership of your time. Ownership of your effort. Ownership of the discipline required to build a life that feels earned. What comes next is not easy, but it is clear. And clarity changes everything from this point forward if you choose to continue beyond comfort into the discipline that defines the next chapter of growth. Chapter 2. The moment you stop waiting. You have been waiting longer than you realize. Waiting for clarity. Waiting for confidence. Waiting for the moment when everything lines up and effort finally feels easy. You tell yourself you're being patient, but deep down you know the truth. You're delaying. You're postponing the work because part of you believes something will arrive and make this simpler. A sign, a breakthrough, permission. It never comes. Waiting disguises itself as preparation. It feels responsible, sensible. You convince yourself you're not ready yet, that you just need more time, more information, more motivation. But motivation doesn't arrive first. Action does. Confidence doesn't appear beforehand. It follows proof. And permission is never granted. It's taken. This is the illusion that keeps people stuck for decades. You are not behind because you started late. You are behind because you keep waiting to feel different before acting differently. That loop never ends on its own. It feeds on hesitation. The longer you wait, the heavier action feels. The heavier action feels, the easier it is to keep waiting. This is how years disappear quietly while you stay busy doing everything except the one thing that would move your life forward. Nobody is coming to rescue you from this pattern. No moment will arrive where fear disappears. No version of you will wake up one day suddenly disciplined, focused, and unafraid. That version is built, not discovered, and it is built by moving while uncertainty is still present. Waiting for certainty is the fastest way to guarantee stagnation. Pain is what finally gets your attention, not dramatic pain, not collapse, just that dull frustration that follows you everywhere. The tension in your chest when you think about wasted time. The irritation you feel watching others move while you stay in place. That pain isn't a signal to quit. It's a signal to act, to stop negotiating, to stop stalling. Pain is clarity trying to break through comfort. You've been taught to avoid discomfort at all costs, to soothe it, distract it, silence it. But discomfort is often the most honest feedback you'll ever receive. It tells you that something is misaligned, that your actions don't match your potential, that your standards have outgrown your habits. Ignoring that signal doesn't make it disappear. It makes it louder over time. Waiting turns pain into regret. Regret is heavier than effort. Regret stays. Effort passes. But when you're stuck in waiting, effort feels unbearable and regret feels distant. Until one day regret shows up fully formed and asks why you didn't move when you still could. That conversation is brutal. You can avoid it now. This is the moment waiting ends, not because you suddenly feel ready, but because you finally understand that readiness is irrelevant. Action creates readiness. Movement creates momentum. Ownership creates confidence. The pivot is internal. You stop asking what you feel like doing and start asking what needs to be done. Ownership changes the tone of your life. When you stop waiting, you stop outsourcing responsibility. You stop blaming timing, circumstances, or your past. You accept a simple truth. Your life moves when you move it. Slowly at first, imperfectly, but deliberately. And deliberate action compounds faster than passive hope ever will. This doesn't require a grand plan. It requires a decision to act without guarantees, a decision to work without applause, a decision to build discipline before comfort asks you to quit again. Ownership means you no longer see yourself as someone waiting for life to happen. You see yourself as someone responsible for making it happen. That identity shift is everything. You will still feel fear. You will still feel doubt. But now those feelings are background noise, not decision makers. You stop asking them for permission. You move anyway. And the more you move, the quieter they become. This is where strength begins, not strength as intensity, but strength as consistency. Showing up on days when nothing feels inspiring. Taking small, controlled actions that align with the person you're becoming. You stop romanticizing transformation and start practicing it. Waiting ends when you realize that no one is coming to choose you. You choose yourself through discipline, through structure, through repeated proof. That proof rewires how you see yourself. You start trusting your word. You start respecting your effort. And respect builds confidence faster than motivation ever could. This is not about doing everything at once. It's about doing the next right thing without delay. Ownership is heavy at first. It removes excuses. It exposes gaps. It forces honesty. But it also gives you control. You are no longer at the mercy of mood or circumstance. You are steering. Slowly, yes, but intentionally. The waiting version of you watch time pass. The ownership version of you uses time as a tool. That difference defines lives. You will feel resistance. Old habits will argue. Comfort will negotiate. It will remind you how easy it was to wait. Don't confuse ease with safety. Waiting feels safe because it demands nothing. Ownership feels uncomfortable because it demands everything. but only one builds a life you respect. This is the decisive pivot. You stop asking when things will change, and start deciding how you will change today. You stop hoping for motivation and start building systems. You stop waiting for confidence and start collecting evidence through action. From this point forward, waiting is no longer neutral. It's a choice you're aware of. And awareness removes excuses. You don't need to be fearless. You need to be responsible for your time, responsible for your effort, responsible for the direction of your life. No one else can carry that weight for you. And once you accept it, something shifts. The ache becomes focus. The frustration becomes fuel. The pain becomes pressure pushing you forward instead of holding you back. This is where ownership begins. And once it begins, it doesn't quietly disappear. It demands consistency. It demands discipline. It demands that you follow through even when excitement fades. That demand is not punishment. It's the price of becoming someone you trust. Waiting taught you how to survive. Ownership will teach you how to build. The next step is learning how to act regardless of mood. How to choose discipline over emotion. How to move forward even when the internal weather is unstable. Because the moment you stop waiting is not the end of the struggle. It's the beginning of control. And control is learned, not given. Chapter 3. Discipline over mood. Your mood is not a reliable leader. It never has been. Mood changes with sleep, weather, praise, rejection, hunger, boredom, and fear. Yet for years, you've allowed it to decide whether you show up or disappear. If you feel good, you act. If you feel tired, you wait. If you feel inspired, you try. If you feel uncertain, you retreat. This is emotional living, and it keeps you weak without ever feeling like failure. Discipline begins the moment you stop asking how you feel. Mood-based action feels human, but it is unstable. It hands control to the most temporary part of you. When mood leads, consistency dies. You become intense for short bursts and absent for long stretches. You start strong, then vanish. You promise, then postpone. This pattern doesn't make you lazy. It makes you untrained. You were never taught how to act without emotional permission. Discipline is that training. Discipline does not care how you feel. It does not negotiate. It does not wait for the perfect internal climate. Discipline shows up quietly and does the work anyway. That quiet repetition is where strength is built, not in dramatic moments, not in emotional highs, but in ordinary days where nothing feels special and you act. Regardless. This is why discipline beats motivation every time. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is structural. Motivation spikes. Discipline sustains. Motivation asks if you're ready. Discipline assumes responsibility. When you rely on mood, you are at the mercy of circumstances. When you rely on discipline, you become predictable to yourself. And predictability builds trust. You don't trust yourself yet because you've been inconsistent. Every time you let mood override commitment, you weaken your word. You teach yourself that promises are flexible, that effort is optional, that comfort wins. Over time, this erodes confidence. Not because you lack ability, but because you lack follow-through. Discipline restores that trust slowly, one kept promise at a time. Emotional living feels expressive, but it's reactive. You respond to life instead of directing it. Discipline is proactive. It sets rules in advance so you don't have to debate yourself daily. You remove friction. You remove choice. You act because it's scheduled. Not because it's exciting. This is how progress becomes boring and unstoppable. Consistency does not look impressive at first. It looks small, repetitive, uncelebrated. That's why most people abandon it. They want intensity. They want transformation to feel powerful. But real power is subtle. It compounds invisibly. Discipline doesn't shout. It accumulates. Mood tells you what you want now. Discipline protects what you want later. You will still feel resistance. Discipline doesn't eliminate discomfort. It removes its authority. You stop asking discomfort for permission. You treat it as background noise. You move anyway. Over time, this rewires your relationship with effort. Work stops feeling personal. It becomes procedural. That shift is everything. When action is no longer emotional, it becomes sustainable. You stop burning out because you stop relying on peaks. You operate at a controlled pace you can maintain. Discipline is not extreme. It is reasonable and relentless. It asks for less intensity and more loyalty, loyalty to the process, loyalty to your standards, loyalty to the person you said you wanted to become. Mood will try to convince you that discipline is oppressive, that structure kills creativity, that freedom means doing what you feel. That's another lie comfort sells. Structure creates freedom. It removes chaos. It gives your energy direction. Without structure, freedom becomes drift. Drift feels light until you look back and realize you've gone nowhere. Discipline is the bridge between decision and identity. You decided to stop waiting. Discipline is how that decision becomes visible in your daily behavior. It translates intention into action without drama. It doesn't require inspiration. It requires compliance. You comply with your own rules. This is where strength quietly grows. Not in moments of confidence, but in moments of resistance you move through anyway. Every time you act without mood's approval, you gain leverage over yourself. That leverage becomes control. Control becomes calm. Calm becomes clarity. You begin to respect your time differently. You protect it. You plan it. You stop wasting energy debating whether you feel like doing the work. You already decided. Decision fatigue disappears. Momentum replaces friction. Discipline simplifies life. Most people think discipline makes life harder. It makes it easier. Fewer choices. Fewer negotiations. Fewer regrets. You know what needs to be done, and you do it. This consistency builds an identity. You become someone who follows through. That identity is magnetic. You stop chasing confidence because you generate it. Confidence is evidence-based. Discipline provides evidence daily. Small wins stack. Proof accumulates. Doubt loses its footing. Not because you silence it, but because you outweigh it. Mood becomes information, not instruction. You acknowledge how you feel without letting it steer. You feel tired and still act. You feel uncertain and still move. You feel bored and still execute. This is emotional maturity. This is self-mastery in motion. Discipline does not mean you never rest. It means rest is intentional, not avoidance. It means recovery is planned, not reactive. Discipline respects energy. Mood wasted. You are learning how to build strength quietly. Quiet strength is dangerous. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't seek validation. It just shows up every day in compounds. 1 week of discipline feels unimpressive. 1 year changes everything. This is the point where decision becomes structure. You move from wanting change to organizing your life around it. You stop relying on how you feel and start relying on what you've decided. That transition marks the end of emotional leadership and the beginning of principled action. Principles don't fluctuate. They anchor. Discipline is not about becoming rigid. It's about becoming reliable. Reliable to yourself. Reliable to your future. Reliable under pressure. The next step is learning how to design your days so discipline has a place to live. Because decision without structure fades. Structure is what carries discipline forward when motivation disappears, and motivation will disappear. But discipline, once installed, stays. Chapter 4. Building strength in silence. No one claps for this part. There is no audience, no encouragement, no visible reward. You wake up, do the work, and nothing changes on the surface. No one notices. No one asks how hard you're trying. No one validates the effort you're putting in behind closed doors. This is the silent phase. And this is where most people quit. They quit because silence feels like failure. You were conditioned to equate progress with recognition, likes, praise, results that arrive quickly enough to be shared. But real growth rarely announces itself. It happens quietly, slowly, and without witnesses. When effort produces no applause, the ego gets restless. It asks, "What's the point?" That question has ended more transformations than failure ever has. This phase tests your motives. Are you building to be seen? Or are you building to become? When no one is watching, everything becomes honest. Your discipline is no longer fueled by approval. Your consistency is no longer reinforced by encouragement. All that's left is your commitment to the standard you set for yourself. This is uncomfortable because it removes performance. You are no longer acting for others. You are acting to align. Silence exposes weakness and strengthens resolve. At first, it feels lonely. You're moving differently now. You're saying no more often. You're choosing effort over entertainment. Your old habits don't fit, and your new identity isn't visible yet. You exist in between. Not who you were, not yet who you're becoming. This in-between space is quiet, and quiet feels unfamiliar when you've used noise to measure worth, but silence is not emptiness. It's pressure that shapes you. When you keep showing up without recognition, something shifts internally. You stop needing permission. You stop needing reassurance. You begin trusting your process instead of seeking validation. This is emotional resilience being forged. Not through hype, but through repetition without reward. Loud validation creates fragile confidence. Silent progress builds unshakable strength. Anyone can perform when praised. Few can persist when ignored. This is why silence separates those who change temporarily from those who transform permanently. You learn to rely on internal standards. You learn to measure success by effort, not applause. This is where discipline matures. You stop announcing your goals. You stop explaining yourself. You let actions speak quietly over time. There is power in this restraint. You conserve energy. You stop leaking motivation into conversations that lead nowhere. You build privately. Private work compounds faster. The absence of attention forces you inward. You confront excuses without distraction. You see where you cut corners. You see where effort fades when no one is watching. And instead of judging yourself, you adjust. You refine. You strengthen. Silence sharpens self-awareness. You begin to understand that most noise exists to avoid discomfort. Social noise, digital noise, mental noise. Silence removes the escape routes. It asks you to sit with resistance and act anyway. That ability defines strength more than any visible achievement. This phase feels slow because growth is internal before it's external. Muscle grows after strain. Skill develops after repetition. Identity forms after behavior is consistent. None of this is visible immediately, but it is happening, quietly, daily, beneath the surface. Those who abandon silence miss the payoff. They leave just before the compounding shows. They mistake invisibility for insignificance. You don't, you stay. You understand that silence is not punishment. It's preparation. You are learning how to operate without external fuel. That skill changes everything. When validation no longer drives you, you become dangerous to mediocrity. You don't need approval to act. You don't slow down when ignored. You don't stop when unseen. Your momentum becomes internal. This is where identity begins to lock in. You are becoming the kind of person who does the work regardless of conditions, regardless of mood, regardless of recognition. That consistency defines you more than any title ever could. Who you are when no one is watching is who you really are. This truth becomes grounding instead of threatening. You stop performing. You stop pretending. You start building something real. The quiet confidence that comes from knowing you did the work, even when it would have been easier not to, settles into you. Silence builds self-respect. Self-respect doesn't come from being admired. It comes from honoring your word, from following through, from knowing you didn't quit just because it got lonely. That respect stabilizes you. It keeps you steady when emotions fluctuate. You no longer chase noise. You choose focus. You begin to prefer quiet mornings, structured days, intentional effort. Noise feels distracting now. Drama feels wasteful. You protect your attention because you know what it's building toward. This is the phase where people misunderstand you. They may think you've disappeared, that you've changed, that you're less available. They're right. You have changed. You are less available for distraction, less available for comfort that costs you growth. More available for discipline. Silence is not withdrawal. It's alignment. You are aligning your actions with your future instead of your past. That alignment requires space. Space requires silence. And silence strengthens those who don't run from it. You stop needing to prove anything. Proof is coming, but it's delayed. And that's fine. You're no longer in a rush. You're building something sustainable, something rooted, something earned. The quiet phase teaches patience, not passive patience. Active patience, the kind that works daily without immediate reward. That patience outlasts hype. It outperforms talent. It survives setbacks. This is how resilience forms. You learn to keep going when nothing external reinforces you. That ability will carry you through future pressure, future doubt, future isolation. Silence becomes familiar territory. Instead of enemy ground. You are no longer afraid of being unseen because you know what's happening. Beneath the surface, strength is growing. Structure is solidifying. Identity is forming, quietly, relentlessly. And one day the silence breaks. Results appear. People notice. But by then, it doesn't matter as much. You're no longer fueled by attention. You're anchored in who you've become. This chapter is not glamorous. But it is essential. If you can build here, you can build anywhere. And now, with strength forged in silence, you are ready to define yourself not by outcomes, but by standards. By who you are becoming, regardless of who is watching. Chapter 5, Identity Before Results. You've been chasing results like they define you, numbers, milestones, outcomes, that promise to finally make you feel confident, worthy, complete. You tell yourself that once you achieve more, you'll become more. But that order is backwards, and it's been keeping you stuck longer than you want to admit. Results don't change identity. Identity produces results. When you chase outcomes without upgrading who you are, progress never sticks. You get short bursts of success followed by collapse. You reach goals and still feel hollow. You improve externally but remain fragile internally. This is what happens when effort outpaces identity. The foundation can't hold the weight of the life you're trying to build. A weak identity creates inconsistent behavior. If you see yourself as someone who tries, you will quit when it's uncomfortable. If you see yourself as someone who struggles with discipline, you'll look for exits when pressure rises. Your actions always return to your self-image. Not your intentions, not your goals. Your identity is the thermostat. Results are just the temperature. This is why chasing motivation fails. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of who you believe you are. And if that belief hasn't been rebuilt, every external win feels temporary. You sabotage without realizing it. You drift back to familiar habits. Not because you're weak, but because you're being consistent with an outdated identity. Becoming comes. Before achieving, you don't wait for confidence to act. You act in ways that force confidence to grow. You don't wait to feel disciplined. You behave like a disciplined person until it becomes normal. Identity is trained, not discovered. This is where embodied standards matter. Standards are not wishes. They are behaviors you refuse to negotiate. A weak identity negotiates constantly. It asks how you feel. It looks for exceptions. An embodied identity doesn't argue. It executes. Standards remove decision-making. They tell you who you are before emotion gets involved. This is how discipline stops feeling forced, when discipline is something you do. It feels heavy, optional, temporary. When discipline is who you are, it feels natural, non-negotiable. You don't debate brushing your teeth. You don't negotiate basic respect. Identity removes friction. You don't rise early because you're motivated. You rise early because that's what someone like you does. This shift is subtle but permanent. Most people try to build habits on top of a self-image that contradicts them. They say they want focus but see themselves as distracted. They want strength but see themselves as inconsistent. That internal mismatch creates resistance. Identity alignment removes it. You act in accordance with who you believe you are. So the work here is not chasing bigger outcomes. It's upgrading the internal standard you live by, asking a harder question. Who are you becoming through your daily actions? Not who you hope to be. who you're training yourself to be right now. Every repetition is a vote. Every time you follow through, you cast a vote for the disciplined version of you. Every time you quit early, you reinforce the opposite. Identity is nothing more than the pattern you repeat most. There is no mystery here. Only honesty. This removes pressure and adds responsibility. You stop obsessing over timelines. You stop measuring yourself by comparison. You focus on alignment, on acting in ways that reinforce the identity you respect. The results will come, but they arrive as a byproduct, not the goal. This is how confidence stabilizes. Confidence that depends on results is fragile. Confidence that comes from identity is grounded. You trust yourself because you know how you behave. You know your standards. You know what you do under pressure. You stop asking, will this work? And start asking, is this who I am? That question changes behavior instantly. You don't skip the workout because someone who values strength doesn't. You don't waste the day because someone who respects time doesn't. You don't abandon the process because someone who honors commitments doesn't. Discipline becomes self-expression. This is not about pretending. It's about practice. Identity is built through repeated evidence. You don't claim it first. You earn it through action. And once earned, it holds. You will feel resistance at first. Old identities fight for survival. Comfort whispers. Doubt questions. But every time you act in alignment, the new identity gains weight. Over time, it becomes heavier than the old one. More familiar. More natural. Eventually, discipline stops feeling like effort. It becomes default behavior. Something you return to without drama, without hype, without force. You don't need to announce it. You live it. This is where lasting change locks in. You are no longer chasing results to feel worthy. You are living from standards that make worthiness irrelevant. You do the work because it reflects who you are, not because you're chasing approval or outcomes. Results will follow. They always do, but by then they won't define you. You are defined by consistency, by integrity, by the quiet certainty that you act in alignment even when it would be easier not to. That certainty cannot be taken away. Discipline is no longer something you practice. It is something you embody, and from here forward, everything you build rests on that identity. Chapter 6, The War for Focus. Your attention is under attack. Not occasionally, constantly. Every notification, every feed, every interruption is competing for control over your mind. This is not accidental. This is the battlefield of the modern world. And most people are losing without realizing they ever entered the fight. What you focus on is what you become. Distraction feels harmless because it arrives in small doses. A glance, a scroll, a check. But those moments fracture your thinking. They pull you out of depth and keep you skimming the surface of your own life. You move faster but nowhere meaningful. Busy but unfocused. Stimulated but empty. Noise replaces clarity. The world profits from your inability to sit still. Dopamine is cheap and endless. It keeps you reactive, restless, dependent. You jump from one stimulus to the next, mistaking stimulation for progress. Meanwhile, the ability to concentrate deeply, to think clearly, to build anything substantial, erodes quietly. Focus is becoming rare. And rare skills create power. When you cannot hold attention, you cannot hold direction. Your goals scatter. Your effort fragments. You start many things and finish few. Not because you lack intelligence, but because your mind has been trained to flee discomfort the moment silence appears. Silence feels uncomfortable. Because focus demands presence, distraction is easier. It soothes. It entertains. It numbs. But it also weakens. A distracted mind cannot endure difficulty. It looks for exits. It abandons depth for relief. Over time, this creates shallow effort and shallow results. Focus restores strength by removing escape routes. When you focus, you stay. You engage fully. You give your energy one direction instead of leaking it everywhere. This is uncomfortable at first. Focus exposes boredom, resistance, and self-doubt. That's why most people avoid it. But staying with that discomfort trains mental endurance. Endurance creates clarity. Clarity allows you to see what matters and ignore what doesn't. Focus is not about doing more. It's about doing less with intensity, choosing depth over breadth, execution over consumption, creation over reaction. Distraction keeps you busy. Focus makes you effective. Every time you reclaim attention, you reclaim power. Power over your thoughts. Power over your emotions. Power over your time. This is why focus feels grounding. It anchors you. It stabilizes the mind. A focused hour outweighs a distracted day. You don't need perfect focus. You need protected focus, boundaries, rules, decisions made in advance. You stop letting the world dictate what you pay attention to. You decide. This is an act of discipline. You begin noticing how often you reach for distraction automatically. How silence triggers restlessness. Awareness alone changes behavior. You pause. You return. You train your mind like a muscle. Weak focus avoids effort. Strong focus endures it. The more you practice sustained attention, the quieter the noise becomes. You don't eliminate distraction. You outgrow its grip. Dopamine stops controlling you. You stop needing constant stimulation to function. Focus reconnects you to yourself. You remember what it feels like to think clearly, to work deeply, to lose track of time because you're engaged, not because you're escaping. This is a different state, a powerful one. In this state, progress accelerates. Tasks that once felt overwhelming become manageable. Decisions become simpler. You see patterns instead of fragments. You stop reacting and start directing. This is why focus unlocks time mastery. When your attention is scattered, time disappears. Hours vanish with nothing to show for them. When your attention is focused, time stretches. You extract more value from fewer hours. Life slows down because you're present. Presence multiplies effectiveness. You realize you don't need more time. You need less distraction, less noise, less input. Focus creates space. Space creates control. Control builds confidence. You trust yourself again because you can stay with tasks. You finish what you start. You experience momentum. Momentum builds belief. Belief reinforces discipline. This is the compounding effect of focus. The war for focus is not fought once. It's fought daily. Every decision to protect attention strengthens you. Every decision to surrender it weakens you. There is no neutral ground. You stop romanticizing multitasking. You stop glorifying busyness. You value depth. You choose single tasking. You work in blocks. You rest intentionally. Focus becomes a lifestyle. This doesn't make you rigid. It makes you intentional. You enjoy things fully instead of half-heartedly. Work feels cleaner. Rest feels earned. The mind thrives under clarity. As focus sharpens, distractions reveal themselves for what they are. Cheap substitutes for meaning. You don't need to demonize them. You just stop letting them lead. Leadership returns inward. You decide where your mind goes. You decide what deserves attention. This decision is quiet but radical. It separates those who drift from those who build. Focus is the gateway to mastery. Gateway to excellence. Gateway to self-respect. Without it, nothing holds. With it, everything strengthens. You are no longer scattered. You are aligned, and alignment changes how you experience time. The next step is learning how to turn focused attention into structured days. Because when attention is mastered, time becomes a tool instead of an enemy. Chapter 7, Time is a Weapon. Time has been slipping through your hands, and you've been calling it normal. Days blur together. Weeks vanish. You look back and wonder how so much effort produced so little progress. It's not because time is against you. It's because you've been treating time like something that happens to you. Instead of something you command, time is not neutral. It either serves you or erodes you. When you live reactively, time disappears. You wake up responding instead of directing. Messages decide your priorities. Urgency replaces intention. You spend the day busy, but at the end nothing feels complete. Reactive days feel full and empty at the same time. You did things, but you didn't build anything. This is how time gets lost, not stolen. Given away, reactive living turns time into an enemy. You're always behind, always catching up, always tired without knowing why. The day controls you, and by the time you regain awareness, it's over. This pattern repeats until months and years vanish, leaving frustration instead of results. Intentional living changes the relationship completely when you plan your time. You decide what matters before the world starts demanding your attention. You stop asking what needs to be done now and start asking what moves your life forward. This shift is powerful because it forces honesty. You can no longer hide behind busyness. Your schedule exposes your values. Time reveals priorities. If your time is scattered, your standards are unclear. If your time is protected, your self-respect is rising. How you use time is how you treat yourself. Wasted time is not a scheduling issue. It's an identity issue. Respect for time reflects respect for self. When you begin treating time as a weapon, everything sharpens. You stop overscheduling. You stop drifting. You give tasks boundaries. You work with intention, then stop. You rest without guilt because your effort was focused. This creates momentum. Momentum doesn't come from working longer. It comes from working deliberately, from knowing what you're building and allocating time accordingly. Small, consistent blocks of focused time outperform long, chaotic days. You don't need more hours. You need command. Command means deciding in advance how time will be used. It means saying no without explanation. It means protecting mornings, guarding focus, and structuring effort so it compounds instead of scatters. Time stops feeling scarce when it's organized. You begin noticing how much time you used to lose to indecision, to distraction, to emotional drift. Structure removes those leaks. You no longer negotiate with yourself all day. You follow a plan. Plans remove friction. This doesn't mean rigidity. It means clarity. You know when to work. You know when to rest. You know what matters today. That clarity frees mental energy. You're not constantly recalibrating. You're executing. Execution builds trust. You trust yourself because you see proof daily. Tasks completed. Progress measured. Time honored. That trust reinforces discipline. Discipline strengthens identity. Identity sustains momentum. Momentum is fragile at first. That's why time must be protected early. One reactive day can derail a week. One unplanned evening can reset patterns. This isn't punishment. It's reality. Momentum requires respect. You start seeing time differently. An hour is no longer something to fill. It's something to invest. You ask what return this hour will produce: growth, recovery, connection, or nothing. That question changes behavior instantly. Time becomes intentional. You stop overcommitting. You stop saying yes out of habit. You stop mistaking availability for value. You understand that every yes costs something else. Usually your future. This awareness sharpens discipline. You don't rush anymore. You move with purpose. You create routines that reduce decision fatigue. You anchor your days around priorities instead of obligations. Time becomes predictable. Predictability creates peace. You know when effort is required and when rest is earned. You stop living in constant urgency. Urgency fades when direction is clear. This is where control turns into momentum. Control organizes. Momentum accelerates. Once your time is structured, progress becomes visible. Projects move forward. Skills improve. Energy stabilizes. You stop starting over because you stop sabotaging yourself with chaos. Chaos was never freedom. It was avoidance. Avoidance of commitment. Avoidance of focus. Avoidance of responsibility. Structure removes hiding places. And in doing so, it gives you power. You realize something important here. Time was never your problem. Your relationship with it was. When you respect time, it respects you back. It gives you results, confidence, space, direction. You feel grounded because your days are aligned. This alignment changes how you show up. You're calmer, more decisive, less reactive. You don't rush into distractions because you know what you're building. You don't feel guilty resting because your effort is clean. Time becomes a weapon because it compounds. Small daily actions accumulate. Missed days don't disappear, they cost you. Honored days pay you back. This truth sharpens discipline. You stop lying to yourself about tomorrow. Tomorrow is built today, and today is shaped by how you treat time. This awareness removes procrastination's appeal. Delaying feels expensive now. You begin to feel momentum. Building. Not explosive, controlled, sustainable. The kind that doesn't rely on motivation. The kind that survives boring days and busy weeks. This is how long-term change is built. Time. Mastery doesn't make you perfect. It makes you consistent. And consistency is unstoppable. You are no longer reacting to life. You are directing it. And with time now under command, the next phase begins. Learning how to honor the boring work that momentum demands, even when excitement fades and repetition becomes the real test of who you are becoming. Chapter 8. The boring work that changes everything. This is the part nobody wants to talk about. The part without adrenaline, without novelty, without the rush of starting something new. This is where progress slows down and repetition takes over, where days look similar, where effort feels ordinary, and where most people quietly quit, not because it's hard, because it's boring. You were taught to chase excitement, to believe growth should feel inspiring, that if something truly mattered, it would always energize you. That's a fantasy. Real transformation is repetitive, predictable, almost dull. And that's exactly why it works. Boring work builds extraordinary lives. Excitement is unreliable. It fades quickly. Novelty wears off. Motivation spikes, then disappears. If you depend on feeling energized, your progress will always be fragile. Boring work doesn't ask how you feel. It asks whether you're willing to repeat what works long after it stops being interesting. This is where endurance is forged. Repetition trains identity. Doing the same foundational actions daily wires discipline deeper than any burst of intensity ever could. It doesn't look impressive. It doesn't feel heroic. But it compounds relentlessly. Most people abandon the process right before it pays off. They mistake boredom for stagnation. They think if it doesn't feel exciting, it must not be working, so they switch paths, change strategies, chase something new, and reset their progress back to zero. Consistency is boring. Starting over is exciting. That's why most people never build anything lasting. The boring work teaches patience. It teaches you how to show up without emotional reward, how to do what's required even when your mind craves stimulation, how to stay loyal to the process instead of chasing novelty. This loyalty changes you. You stop needing constant feedback. You stop checking for progress obsessively. You trust the system you're building. You understand that mastery lives in repetition, not reinvention. Every skill you respect was built this way. Strength comes from repeating basic movements. Focus comes from repeated attention. Discipline comes from repeated follow-through. None of it is glamorous. All of it works. You begin to see boredom differently, not as an obstacle, but as a filter. Boredom filters out those who want fast results without commitment. Those who stay passed through to the other side, where progress accelerates quietly. This is where boredom becomes power. When you can work without excitement, you become independent of circumstance. Your effort no longer fluctuates with mood. You operate steadily, predictably. This steadiness is rare. And rarity creates advantage. You fall in love with the process, not because it's thrilling, but because it's honest. You see yourself improving in small, undeniable ways. Slightly stronger, slightly more focused, slightly more reliable. These changes are subtle, but they stack. Stacking wins builds belief. You stop craving dramatic breakthroughs. You respect incremental gains. You understand that boring days are not wasted days. They are the foundation. This mindset shift prepares you for endurance. Endurance is not pushing harder, it's continuing longer. It's staying consistent through plateaus, through slow weeks, through periods where nothing seems to change. Those periods are not pauses. They are preparation. Boring work removes ego. There's nothing to perform, nothing to prove. Just the task in front of you. You do it, then you do it again. This humility strengthens focus. You stop chasing validation and start chasing precision. Precision compounds. You refine technique. You eliminate waste. You get better quietly. Others don't notice at first. That's fine. You do. This is where discipline becomes calm. No drama. No inner battles, just execution. You don't hype yourself up. You don't wait to feel ready. You move through the work with acceptance. Acceptance creates sustainability. You stop burning out because you stop sprinting unnecessarily. You adopt a pace you can maintain. You respect recovery. You respect limits. And paradoxically, you get farther. The boring work teaches restraint. It teaches you not to quit when things feel flat. Not to chase stimulation when silence appears. You sit with the repetition. You trust it. Trust builds resilience. Resilience allows you to stay when others leave. That alone changes outcomes. This is the phase where identity deepens. You are no longer someone who tries when it's exciting. You are someone who shows up because it's time. That identity is powerful. It doesn't depend on feeling inspired. It depends on commitment. Commitment outlasts emotion. You begin to understand why extraordinary people look calm. Why their effort seems effortless. It's not because the work is easy. It's because they stopped fighting boredom. They embraced it. They built excellence quietly. This chapter is about accepting the truth. There is no shortcut past repetition. No hack around consistency. No exciting replacement for doing the work again and again. Once you accept this, resistance fades. You stop wishing it were different. You stop waiting for it to feel better. You do what needs to be done, and you let time handle the rest. Time rewards repetition. The boring work that changes everything doesn't feel special in the moment. But one day you look back and realize it changed you completely. And because you stayed, because you endured, you're now ready to face the deeper test. The one that comes when pain appears and asks whether you will quit or use it as proof that you're moving forward. Chapter 9. Pain as proof of progress. Pain has been following you, and for a long time, you thought it meant something was wrong. You felt resistance and assumed failure. You felt discomfort and believed you were unprepared, so you pulled back. You slowed down, you searched for easier paths. But pain was never the enemy. Misunderstanding it was, pain is not a stop sign. It's a signal. Every meaningful change creates friction. Growth stretches you beyond what's familiar, and stretching hurts. Muscles tear before they strengthen. Focus strains before it sharpens. Discipline aches before it stabilizes. Pain shows up when you leave comfort behind, and comfort was never where progress lived. Avoiding pain keeps you weak. Weakness isn't the presence of struggle. It's the avoidance of it. It's choosing comfort repeatedly and calling it self-care. It's mistaking ease for safety. That kind of living shrinks you slowly while convincing you you're protecting yourself. Voluntary hardship does the opposite. When you choose discomfort deliberately, you reclaim control. You are no longer reacting to pain. You are using it, training through it, learning from it. Pain becomes feedback instead of fear. Feedback tells you you're applying pressure. Pressure is necessary. Without it, nothing changes. Without it, you stagnate. Pain is the body and mind saying, this is new. This is demanding. This is growth. Interpreted correctly, it becomes informative instead of overwhelming. Most people misinterpret pain and retreat. They assume struggle means they're not built for this. They assume resistance means they chose the wrong path. They assume confidence should feel calm. That belief keeps them trapped in survival mode, always seeking relief instead of strength. Strength is built by staying with discomfort without panicking, staying with effort without immediate reward, staying present instead of escaping. This staying rewires your relationship with pain. You stop fearing it. You stop dramatizing it. You stop personalizing it. Pain becomes data. You notice where effort is required. You notice where habits are underdeveloped. You notice where discipline is still fragile. None of this is failure. It's information. Information allows adjustment. Adjustment leads to progress. This shift changes everything. You no longer ask, why is this so hard? You ask, what is this teaching me? That question turns suffering into strategy. It puts you back in control. Voluntary hardship builds confidence. Not loud confidence, earned confidence. The kind that comes from knowing you didn't quit when discomfort appeared. The kind that doesn't need reassurance. The kind that holds steady under pressure. Survival mode reacts. Confidence responds. When you were surviving, pain dictated behavior. You avoided it, you escaped it, you negotiated with it. Now you engage with it, you manage it. You move through it with intention. This is the transition point. You are no longer trying to get comfortable. You are trying to get capable. Capability requires exposure. Exposure creates discomfort. Discomfort creates adaptation. Adaptation creates strength. Asterisk, you start noticing something subtle. The pain changes. It becomes familiar. Less threatening. Less dramatic. You realize you can endure more than you thought. That realization expands your limits. Limits move when challenged. The pain that once scared you now signals progress. It tells you you're training the right muscle, pushing the right boundary, building something real. This applies everywhere. Physical effort, mental focus, emotional discipline. All of it produces resistance. All of it rewards those who stay engaged long enough. You stop seeking relief. Relief weakens momentum. Relief pulls you backward. Instead, you seek understanding. You manage intensity. You pace yourself without quitting. This creates sustainability. You don't burn out because you stop fearing discomfort. You stop fighting it emotionally. You accept it as part of the process. That acceptance saves energy. Energy is redirected toward execution. Execution builds evidence. Evidence builds belief. Belief builds confidence. This is how pain becomes proof. Proof that you are no longer avoiding growth. Proof that you are applying pressure consistently. Proof that you are becoming resilient. Resilience is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It reveals itself when pressure hits and you remain steady, when discomfort rises and you don't retreat, when effort demands more and you respond calmly. You stop seeing pain as punishment. You see it as participation. Participation in your own development. Participation in building something better than comfort ever could. This mindset removes fear. Fear thrives on avoidance. When you engage pain willingly, fear loses leverage. You are no longer threatened by difficulty. You expect it. Expectation stabilizes emotion. You don't panic when things get hard. You don't question your path every time resistance appears. You understand the pattern now. Growth equals friction. Friction equals feedback. Feedback equals progress. This understanding shifts you from survival into confidence. Confidence is not the absence of pain. It's the knowledge that pain won't stop you, that you can adjust, adapt, continue. You trust yourself under pressure. That trust is earned here. Every time you choose discomfort over avoidance, you reinforce it. Every time you stay instead of escaping, you strengthen it. You are no longer fragile. You are becoming durable. And durability changes how you move forward. It prepares you for separation, for standing apart, for the social cost of growth that comes next, because once you stop fearing pain, you stop needing approval, and that changes who you stand with and who you leave behind. Chapter 10. Separating from the crowd. Growth has a price most people never mention. It's not effort. It's not discipline. It's distance. As you change, the room changes. Conversations feel flatter. Old habits feel heavier. The crowd you once blended into starts to feel unfamiliar. And for the first time, you feel it clearly. Belonging and becoming rarely coexist. When you raise your standards, you disrupt patterns. When you choose discipline, you expose complacency. Not intentionally, not aggressively, but your presence alone becomes a mirror, and not everyone wants to look. So misunderstandings grow, invitations fade, jokes stop landing. You're still the same person, but you're no longer playing the same game. This is the social cost of growth. At first, it hurts. Humans are wired to belong. Connection feels safe, familiar. Separating feels like rejection, even when it isn't. You question yourself. You wonder if you're being extreme, if you're doing too much, if this change is worth the distance. It's creating. That doubt is normal. What isn't normal is letting it pull you back. Most people choose belonging over becoming. They lower standards to stay included. They mute ambition to avoid friction. They stay relatable instead of rising. This choice feels comforting in the moment, but it quietly kills self-respect. Becoming demands separation. Not forever. Not dramatically, but deliberately. You spend less time explaining yourself, less time justifying your choices. You stop trying to convince others that your path makes sense. You realize something important. Not everyone is meant to come with you. This realization is heavy. You grieve versions of connection that no longer fit. You miss the ease of blending in. You miss being understood without explanation. But you also feel something new growing underneath. Strength, clarity, alignment, isolation, sharpens identity. When the noise fades, you hear yourself more clearly. Your values become louder. Your priorities stabilize. You stop borrowing beliefs from your environment. You decide what matters independently. This solitude is not emptiness. It's refinement. You are refining who you listen to. Who influences you? Who has access to your time and energy? This selectiveness is not arrogance. It's protection. Protection of momentum. When you're building, distractions aren't just digital. They're social. Conversations that normalize stagnation. Relationships that reward comfort. Environments that subtly pressure you to stay the same. Separating doesn't mean cutting everyone off. It means choosing alignment over approval. It means accepting that not everyone will understand your discipline, your boundaries, your pace. And that's okay. Understanding is not required for progress. This phase feels lonely because it's unfamiliar. You're used to measuring yourself through others, through feedback, through comparison. Solitude removes those references. You stand alone with your choices. This is where self-trust begins. Without external validation, you learn to validate yourself. You measure progress internally, effort, consistency, alignment. These become your metrics. This internal compass steadies you. You stop adjusting based on opinions. You stop shrinking to fit rooms you've outgrown. You stop explaining your vision to people committed to comfort. Silence becomes less threatening. You fill it with work, with reflection, with disciplined action. You realize you don't need constant connection to feel grounded. You need purpose. Purpose anchors you when belonging. WAVERS. As you grow, some people will misunderstand your absence. They'll assume distance is judgment. It's not. It's focus. You are not rejecting them. You are choosing yourself. That choice takes courage because belonging feels safe, but it can be a trap that keeps you average. Becoming requires stepping out of the group long enough to redefine who you are. Redefinition happens alone. Not isolated forever, but isolated long enough to build something real. Strong enough to stand without support. Clear enough to choose relationships intentionally. This solitude is temporary, but necessary. Those who endure it emerge with confidence. Not loud confidence. Grounded confidence. The kind that doesn't need approval because it's rooted in self-respect. You begin to trust your judgment. You stop outsourcing decisions. You stop looking around before acting. You move according to standards, not consensus. Consensus produces mediocrity. Self-trust produces direction. You understand now that separation is not loss. It's alignment. You didn't lose people. You gained clarity. You didn't become isolated. You became intentional. This reframing matters because loneliness feels different when you know why you're there. When solitude has purpose, it strengthens instead of weakens. You stop filling space just to avoid discomfort. You sit with yourself. You think. You plan. You execute. You build quietly. This quiet becomes familiar. Comfortable, even comfortable because it's honest. You are no longer performing for a crowd. You are preparing for a future that demands strength, focus, and self-trust. This is the bridge from external validation to internal authority, from belonging to becoming, from needing approval to trusting yourself. Once self-trust solidifies, you stop fearing distance. You know you can stand alone if needed. That knowledge changes how you move through the world. You are no longer pulled by opinions. You are guided by principles. Principles hold. This chapter is not about isolation as an identity. It's about solitude as a phase that forges independence. that sharpens standards, that teaches you to rely on yourself, because before you can lead your life confidently, you must trust yourself completely, and that trust is built here, in the quiet space between who you were and who you are becoming. Chapter 11. The Unbreakable Routine. Motivation was never meant to carry you this far. It's unreliable, emotional, and temporary. It shows up loud, then disappears without warning. If your progress still depends on how inspired you feel, it will always be fragile. This is where that changes. Systems replace motivation. A system doesn't care how you feel. It doesn't ask for confidence. It doesn't wait for the perfect day. It runs because it's designed to run. When motivation fades, systems remain. And what remains determines what you become. Chaos is exhausting. Chaotic days feel busy but unproductive. You wake up reacting instead of directing. You decide everything in real time. You negotiate with yourself constantly. What should I do first? What matters today? Should I rest or push? That constant decision-making drains energy before real work even begins. Structure removes that drain. A routine answers questions before they appear. It tells you when to wake, when to work, when to rest. You don't debate. You follow? This is not rigidity. It's relief. Relief from friction. Relief from indecision. Relief from relying on willpower you don't have every day. Willpower fades. Systems don't. Most people fail not because they lack desire, but because they rely on internal strength instead of external structure. They try to white-knuckle discipline through emotion. That works briefly. Then life applies pressure. Stress rises. Energy drops. And progress collapses. Routines protect progress under pressure. When things get hard, you don't rise to inspiration. You fall to your systems. If your systems are weak, everything becomes optional. If your systems are strong, execution becomes automatic. Automatic action builds. Inevitability, reaction feels normal because it's common. Notifications, requests, emergencies. You spend the day responding. At the end, you feel depleted and behind. Reaction keeps you alive but never lets you build. Rhythm replaces reaction. A rhythm gives shape to effort. You work in blocks. You repeat patterns. You create predictable effort. That predictability compounds. Small actions repeated daily produce massive change over time. Routine makes success boring and unstoppable. You stop needing to feel ready. You stop needing to feel confident. You act because it's time. That simplicity is powerful. It frees mental space. It stabilizes emotion. You begin to feel grounded. That your days stop feeling random. You know what's coming. You know what's required. Anxiety fades because uncertainty fades. You're no longer guessing how to move. You're executing a plan. Plans turn intention into reality. An unbreakable routine doesn't mean every minute is controlled. It means the important things are protected. Focused work, physical training, learning, recovery, these become anchors. Everything else adjusts around them. Anchors create momentum. Once a routine is established, missing it feels wrong. Not because of guilt, but because it breaks alignment. You're no longer forcing discipline. You're preserving identity. This is where discipline becomes inevitable. You don't ask if you'll do the work today. You already know. It's scheduled. It's expected. It's normal. Normal behavior defines identity. When discipline is routine, confidence stabilizes. You trust yourself because your behavior is predictable. You know you'll show up. That trust removes anxiety. You're no longer hoping you'll do the right thing. You expect it. Expectation shapes reality. Routines also reveal truth. If something isn't scheduled, it doesn't matter as much as you claim. If something is always postponed, it's not a priority. Structure exposes self-deception. That honesty sharpens focus. You stop lying to yourself about effort. You see where time goes. You see what's protected and what's neglected. This awareness allows adjustment. You refine the system instead of blaming yourself. Systems are adjustable. Emotions are chaotic. When you miss a day, you don't spiral. You return to rhythm. When energy is low, you follow the routine anyway, at a controlled pace. This prevents collapse. Collapse comes from inconsistency, not intensity. The routine absorbs fluctuations. High energy days and low energy days still move forward. Progress continues even when motivation disappears. This is what makes success inevitable, not dramatic effort, not constant excitement. Predictable execution. You begin to understand why disciplined people seem calm. They are not fighting themselves daily. Their systems carry them. Carrying yourself is exhausting. Being carried by structure is sustainable. Routine also protects rest. Rest without structure turns into avoidance. Rest within structure turns into recovery. You rest because it's planned, not because you escaped effort. That difference matters. Recovery sustains momentum. You stop feeling guilty when resting and stressed when working. Each has its place. The routine creates balance without negotiation. Balance emerges from structure, not spontaneity. Over time, the routine becomes unbreakable, not because it's perfect, but because it's practiced. You don't need extreme discipline. You need consistent structure. Structure outlasts emotion. You realize something quietly powerful. If you keep following this routine, results are unavoidable. Not immediately, not dramatically. But inevitably, inevitability is calming. You're no longer chasing success. You're scheduling it, showing up daily, letting time do its work. This is the shift from hope to certainty. Hope asks. Certainty executes. With an unbreakable routine in place, you no longer wonder if you'll progress. You know you will as long as you follow the system, and now, with structure holding you steady, the next transformation begins. The moment when belief replaces doubt, not through words, but through evidence you've earned every single day. Chapter 12. When confidence replaces doubt. Doubt used to speak louder than you did. It questioned every decision, second-guessed every move, and waited for proof you were never willing to give it. You tried to silence it with affirmations, motivation, and reassurance, but it always returned. Because doubt doesn't disappear through words. It disappears through evidence. Evidence changes the internal conversation. Confidence doesn't arrive as a feeling first. It arrives as recognition. Recognition that you've been showing up, that you've been following through, that you've been doing the work even when no one was watching. Slowly, quietly, effort compounds into belief. Belief built on proof is uncheckable. At first, you don't notice the shift. You just move differently. You hesitate less. You decide faster. You don't overthink every action. You trust your process because you've seen it work, not once, but repeatedly. This is the difference between borrowed confidence and earned confidence. Borrowed confidence needs validation. Earned confidence stands alone. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't rush. It's calm, grounded, stable. Doubt fades because it runs out of arguments. It used to say you wouldn't last. You did. It said you'd quit when it got hard. You didn't. It said you weren't disciplined. Your routine proved otherwise. Every day you followed through weakened doubt's voice. Doubt thrives on inconsistency. Consistency starves it. You stop needing to convince yourself. You already know. You've built a track record. That record becomes internal reference. When uncertainty appears, you don't panic. You recall evidence. Evidence steadies you. You trust your ability to figure things out, to adjust, to persist. This trust changes how you enter challenges. You don't approach them hoping to survive. You approach them expecting to adapt. This expectation shifts posture. You stand differently. Speak differently. Move differently. Not aggressively, confidently. You no longer need to rush or prove. You operate from quiet certainty. Confidence simplifies decisions. You stop overanalyzing small choices. You stop seeking constant reassurance. You act based on standards, not fear. Fear still exists, but it no longer dictates behavior. This is emotional maturity. You understand that discomfort doesn't mean danger. Uncertainty doesn't mean failure. You've experienced these states and continued anyway. That memory creates resilience. Resilience builds self-belief. Self-belief removes hesitation. Hesitation used to cost you time. Opportunities slipped away while you waited to feel ready. Now, readiness is irrelevant. You trust your capacity to respond. Response replaces reaction. You don't freeze. You don't flee. You engage. You assess. You act. This responsiveness is confidence in motion. Confidence also changes your relationship with mistakes. Mistakes no longer define you. They inform you. You don't spiral. You correct. You move on. This detachment keeps momentum intact. Momentum reinforces belief. You are no longer trying to escape doubt. You've outgrown it. It doesn't fit the evidence you've built. It may still appear, but it lacks authority. Authority now comes from experience. Experience earned through discipline, through routine, through endurance, through staying when it would have been easier to quit. You recognize yourself, not the version who talked about change, the version who executed. That recognition creates pride, not ego. Pride grounded in integrity. Integrity stabilizes confidence. You know who you are when pressure hits. You've been there before. You didn't collapse. You adjusted. That memory anchors you. This is the shift from survival to expansion. Survival focuses on avoiding loss. Expansion focuses on creating growth. When confidence replaces doubt, your goals expand naturally. You think bigger. You aim higher. Not recklessly, intentionally. You no longer ask if you're capable. You ask what's next. Next implies continuation. You're no longer rebuilding from zero each week. You're building forward, layer by layer. This forward motion is energizing without being frantic. Calm replaces urgency. Urgency was fueled by fear of falling behind. Calm is fueled by trust in process. You know that if you continue, progress will follow. This calm is powerful. It allows patience. Patience allows precision. Precision accelerates results. You don't need to rush anymore. You move with confidence because you know consistency works. You've seen it, lived it. This chapter is not a finish line. It's a transition. Confidence doesn't mean you're done. It means you're ready. Ready to expand beyond maintenance, beyond survival, beyond simply holding ground. Now you build from strength. With doubt no longer dominating, you can raise standards again. Demand more. Not from insecurity, but from capability. Capability invites mastery, and mastery requires living by standards, not feelings. That is where this journey moves next. Chapter 13. Living from standards, not feelings. Feelings are powerful, but they are unstable rulers. They rise and fall without warning. They exaggerate fear, soften resolve, and negotiate commitment. For most of your life, feelings decided your actions. If you felt motivated, you moved. If you felt tired, you stopped. If you felt uncertain, you waited. That way of living felt natural, but it kept you inconsistent. Standards change everything. Standards are not emotions. They don't fluctuate. They don't negotiate. They define how you live before the day begins. When standards lead, feelings become background noise instead of commands. This is emotional discipline, and it is the foundation of long-term mastery. Emotional indulgence feels kind, but it weakens you. Indulgence listens to every feeling and treats it as truth. It asks what you want now. It prioritizes comfort, relief, and ease. Over time, this creates instability. You become reactive. Your effort depends on mood. Your identity becomes flexible. Flexible identities collapse under pressure. Standards create structure where feelings create chaos. When you live from standards, you already know what's required. You don't debate whether to show up. You don't negotiate effort. You act according to principle, not preference. This removes emotional friction. The work gets done regardless of how you feel. This is power that doesn't spike or crash. Power stabilizes here because your behavior no longer depends on internal weather. You feel tired and still act. You feel uncertain and still decide. You feel unmotivated and still execute. Feelings are acknowledged, not obeyed. Obedience to emotion is instability. Obedience to standards is strength. Personal law is built deliberately. It's not borrowed. It's chosen. These are the rules you refuse to break, even when no one is watching. They define who you are in moments of resistance. I train even when I don't feel like it. I work when it's scheduled. I tell the truth to myself. I don't abandon commitments. These laws remove excuses. Excuses thrive when rules are unclear. Standards make expectations obvious. You know where the line is? You don't cross it. This clarity simplifies life. You stop exhausting yourself with internal debates. You stop justifying inconsistency. You stop pretending feelings deserve control. You move according to who you are. Not what you feel. This is identity in action. Identity anchored in standards doesn't need motivation. It doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't ask for reassurance. It follows its own law. That law creates calm. Calm comes from certainty. Certainty comes from predictability. You know how you will act. That knowledge creates confidence that doesn't waver. Living from feelings keeps you busy managing emotion. Living from standards frees energy for execution. You begin to see how often feelings used to sabotage you. How often a passing emotion derailed an entire day. You no longer give emotions that authority. Authority belongs to principle. This doesn't make you cold. It makes you steady. You still feel deeply. You just don't let feelings override values. Values hold under pressure. Pressure is where mastery is revealed. When emotions surge and standards remain intact, you've built something real. This is the stage where power stabilizes. You're no longer swinging between extremes. No longer overworking, then collapsing. No longer starting strong and fading. Your effort becomes even, sustainable, reliable. Reliability is mastery and progress. You stop chasing intensity. You value consistency. You stop reacting to discomfort. You move through it. Discomfort no longer scares you because standards don't bend when discomfort appears. They guide you through it. You begin trusting yourself completely, not because you always feel confident, but because you always act according to your law. That trust removes anxiety. You're no longer worried about whether you'll show up. You already know the answer. This internal alignment is rare. Most people are ruled by feeling. They call it authenticity. But authenticity without discipline leads to chaos. Discipline without feeling leads to rigidity. Standards balance both. You feel, but you don't surrender. This balance sets the stage for long-term mastery. Mastery isn't about heroic effort. It's about repeated adherence to principle over time. Years, not weeks. Decades, not days. Standards make that possible. They turn effort into habit. Habit into identity. Identity into legacy. You are no longer experimenting with change. You are enforcing it. This enforcement is quiet, firm, and consistent. You don't announce standards. You live them. That silence is powerful, because when life applies pressure, your response is already decided. And that is what mastery looks like in real time. Final chapter, the life they didn't expect. You didn't arrive here suddenly. There was no dramatic moment where everything changed overnight. This life was built quietly, through days that looked ordinary from the outside. And that's the irony. The life they didn't expect came from the discipline they never saw. You look back now and recognize the truth. What once felt like confinement was preparation. The boredom, the repetition, the solitude, the discomfort. It was all shaping you. Every time you chose discipline over feeling, structure over chaos, standards over excuses, you were forging something durable. You were forging yourself. The ordinary life you once feared was wasting you is actually testing you. It asked one question every day. Would you show up anyway? Would you honor your word? Would you act without applause? And every time you did, something shifted internally. Identity replaced insecurity. You are no longer chasing motivation. You don't wait for confidence. You don't negotiate with discomfort. You move with calm certainty because you trust the system you've built. And the standards you live by. That trust changes everything. You wake up differently. Not rushed. Not anxious. Grounded. You know what matters. You know what you do? Your days are aligned with your values. Your effort has direction. You don't feel extraordinary. You feel solid. That solidity is power. Power that doesn't need validation. Power that doesn't need noise. Power that remains steady under pressure. You've stopped trying to impress anyone. You're too busy respecting yourself. This is the victory most people never reach, not a victory over circumstances, not a victory over others, a victory over your former self, over distraction, over inconsistency, over the version of you that waited, drifted, and hoped something would change. Something did change. You did. You didn't become someone else. You became yourself, fully expressed, disciplined, focused, reliable, calm. You no longer chase extraordinary because extraordinary is now a byproduct of how you live. It shows up naturally when standards are high and effort is consistent. Your life feels earned. That feeling can't be bought. It can't be rushed. It can't be faked. It only comes from doing the work when it was boring, lonely, and uncomfortable. You remember the quiet ache, the feeling that you were capable of more but stuck repeating the same days. That ache doesn't haunt you anymore. It fuels gratitude now. It reminds you where you started and why you never want to go back. You understand now, comfort was never peace. Avoidance was never safety. Waiting was never patience. Those were illusions that kept you small. Discipline gave you freedom, freedom to choose your actions, freedom to trust your decisions, freedom to move through the world without being pulled apart by emotion and noise. Your mind is clearer, your time is intentional. Your energy is directed. This convergence is rare. Most people spend their lives fragmented. One version at work, another at home, another in their head. You integrated. You aligned. You became whole. Wholeness is strength. You no longer need to prove anything. You don't need permission. You don't need to explain your pace or your priorities. You've outgrown the need for approval. Approval was replaced by self-respect. Self-respect stabilizes you when life tests you again. And it will. Difficulty doesn't disappear. Pressure still comes. But now you meet it differently. You don't panic. You don't retreat. You respond. Response is mastery in motion. You've learned how to build yourself from the inside out, how to train attention, how to command time, how to endure boredom, how to use pain as feedback, how to stand alone, how to trust yourself, how to live by standards. These skills don't fade. They compound. This is why the life they didn't expect lasts, not because it's perfect, because it's rooted in discipline, rooted in clarity, rooted in identity. You didn't get lucky, you got consistent. And consistency, applied long enough, always looks like talent from the outside. People may notice now. They may comment on your calm, your focus, your results. They may wonder when you changed. They missed the point. You didn't change suddenly, you changed. Daily. Quietly. Relentlessly. And you do it again. Because you know what this life costs, and you know it's worth it. You are no longer drifting. You are no longer surviving. You are building, living, and moving with intention. This is not the end. It asks the standard. The standard you will live from moving forward. The story they didn't expect was never about transformation as an event. It was about mastery as a lifestyle, and now you live it.